It is 5:30. I'd like to call the study session to order now that Mr. Gibson has arrived. First item on the agenda is public comment period. Seeing no public in attendance, we'll move on to the next item, which is roundtable discussion amongst council. Do we have anything at study session that we need to discuss? Dave?
I have a few topics on the animal ordinance part, but I know that's up in the regular session, and I see there's like a budget presentation, so if we want to, if we've got time during study session after things are done.
I don't know. How long is the budget gonna take? Like,
That shouldn't take too long. You also,
Okay, so
in your study session, item 6 is review of council agenda.
yep,
You can bring it up at that time too, when we review, if you have any questions about the agenda.
okay.
That's on the regular meeting agenda, so that'd be appropriate
All
at
right,
that time
'cause
as
I was
well.
thinking maybe we'd talk about it now if we got time, but.
But we can talk about it
either-
now too if you want.
Either way, I didn't know how long the budget presentation would take, so,
Yeah, I'm easy going.
okay. Dave, if you want to bring them up, and then if we need to discuss it further, maybe at the end, if we need to research anything or something.
Okay.
Want to talk about it now?
Yeah, so my first question is, where are chickens prohibited right now in the ordinances?
So give me 1 second, please.
I believe it's under zoning, not under ordinances is why. If you have to look in the zoning.
Yeah, I do, yeah. I'm pulling up the actual part of the zoning ordinance, at least I'm trying to.
Oh,
Yeah, so. Section 1613 of the city zoning ordinance, which says, "No animals, livestock, or fowls, or structures for same, other than common household pets, shall be permitted as a permitted or accessory use in the city, unless otherwise specified in this ordinance." So the word fowl is an umbrella term that is commonly understood to include chickens. And this was a determination made by our city attorney, Nick Curcio, on March 27th, 2020.
So does it, I mean, are we in conflict if we pass this animal ordinance saying that we'll permit chickens, but we've got that says no?
No. So according to our city attorney, when we were drafting this, the administrative ordinance, more or less, will kind of just trump the zoning ordinance per se.
okay.
I don't use the word per se because I don't know what other word to put at the end of my statement, so I apologize.
And I thought it in the zoning said where it was not permitted. So in essence, by having a zoning ordinance, we're telling you where it's permitted.
Yeah,
So it was a restrictive saying you could have them only if they were permitted. Otherwise, you couldn't have them, but you'd have to come to the city and ask for permission, and this just kind of sets the rules, I think, is a little different. So that's my understanding when I read the zoning ordinance.
yeah. So, and according to our, our legal counsel, be the one that would defend us against any legal action taken against the city. The proposed ordinance tonight, is what we need to do to allow people to have chickens in the city.
Okay. And then my other question, I've got a couple more, but 621A in the proposed ordinance,
Okay?
it links the parcel size to the number of chickens, but I'm not clear why that would matter, because we're also saying they have to be inside of a closed enclosure, covered enclosure.
So I can't recall exactly the couple's name that approached the city requesting this ordinance.
Deco.
Yep, and they brought a handful of examples, and I'm not sure if one of those were, one of those size limitations were in one of those examples or not.
Hudsonville had size ordinance based on lot size or acreage. And I think it's reasonable in this, I thought we discussed that it was, if you had a really small lot, it wouldn't be very appropriate to have like 40 chickens. So we have to have some sort of limit, and one of them would be kind of how much land you actually have to have chickens on. Is there enough there? So
But I guess for me, it's, okay, so it's 4 to 6. Half-acre parcel can have 4 chickens, an acre parcel can have 5, and if you've got acre and a half or more, you can have 6. But we also say that they have to be inside an enclosure. So if the enclosure is where they're gonna be, then why does it matter how big your parcel is?
Maybe so you just, so we don't have a yard full of chickens? I mean, so we don't,
But you wouldn't, I mean, if they're in the enclosure, you wouldn't have a yard full of chickens.
oh, I thought the enclosure was
Where
just
am I?
at,
Go ahead.
is that, I thought the enclosure was just where they were kept at night. Is that, are they always to be kept in the enclosure?
They either
Did I
have to
read
be
it
in the
wrong?
enclosure or in a fenced area.
Oh,
And if we said, okay, there has to be a fenced area that they're going into, but that's not what we're saying. We're saying there has to be an enclosure and then the fenced area is optional. And there's no minimum size for the enclosure. It's not like, oh, if you've got 4 chickens, your enclosure needs to be this big. There's a maximum size. So again, if we're telling everybody you gotta keep them in an enclosure and it can't be
Yeah.
bigger than this, then why?
So I'm going to read section 6-21 because I come to a different conclusion.
Yeah, me too, because,
So when I read section 6-21, subsection D.
E?
D is
Yep.
in die.
Oh.
Chickens shall be provided with a covered enclosure and must be kept in the covered enclosure or an adjoining fenced enclosure at all times. So I believe the way I read that is there has to be a chicken coop and they can be in a fenced backyard. So if you take a typical house in our, just pick a neighborhood here, north side, and it's, 40 feet wide and 100 feet long. And the backyard is completely fenced because the previous owners had a dog and they let the dog out the backyard and the dog would run around the backyard and run back up to the back door. This language allows you to have chickens that, are in a coop or in that fenced area as well. Now, so that's the way that language reads to me. So I think that might be one reason you have a limit on it, because if it's a less than a, half-acre lot, you could have 20 chickens then, running around in the backyard. That word "or," and there's how I read it, or an adjoined fenced enclosure at all times.
I mean, I'm not advocating for 20 chickens. I'm just wondering why some parcels will only have 4 chickens allowed and others will have up to 6. Like, why not just allow 6 for everybody? Because there's no minimum size on the enclosure. It's not like, oh, if you've got an enclosure, it needs to be the full acre and a half. So we're not saying every chicken needs this much square footage.
You just
Isn't
feel
it
like-
just simpler to just say, everybody can have up to 6 chickens?
You just feel like it's kind of arbitrary? Is that what you're,
Yeah, I don't see the purpose of, I don't see how the parcel lot gets tied to the number of chickens you can have. I could see if we said if you've got this big of an enclosure, you can have up to 4. If you've got this big of an enclosure, you could have up to 5. Like, every chicken needs so many square feet inside, but we don't do that. We set a maximum for the enclosure. Is it easier just to say you can have up to 6 chickens than call it good?
I'm fine with the way it's written, but that's up to everybody else. Because they don't have to stay in the closed enclosure, or the covered enclosure,
so basically it's
if there's
just,
a fence.
sorry,
No, that's okay, go ahead,
I was thinking out loud.
keep thinking.
So basically, section 621A is where
Yeah.
what you have an issue with. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and if you go on over here, we spelled
I'm
it.
fine with how it's written. I understand it's limited on the size because the size of the property. Just, it makes logical sense to me that you would limit the number of chickens based on the size of the lot. If somebody had a really tiny lot, you wouldn't allow a lot of chickens, but the difference in numbers here is pretty minimal, so it's also, I can see Dave with it doesn't make much sense because you're talking 1 chicken versus 2 versus 3. So it's, it's not a humongous thing one way or another. I would have probably you know, because some lots, it might not even be able to do anything, because if you look at the setbacks from other neighboring properties, you're not going to be able to have them, because it's just, you have to be 25 feet away from any other neighboring structure, if I remember right.
5 feet.
So the separation, all covered enclosures or fenced enclosures shall be located in the rear yard, shall be no closer than 5 feet to any property line of an adjacent property, and shall be located no closer than 25 feet to any residential structure. So it's 5 from the property line and 25 feet from
Well,
a
I was saying
residential
25
structure.
from a structure, so if you had some houses in this area where your neighboring structures are pretty close, you could end up with nowhere really in your backyard, because you would be 25 feet circles. You'd go, well, you really can't have them here because you just don't have enough space to have an enclosure that's far enough away from the neighboring structures, and we set that because we didn't want to create a nuisance for the neighbor. Because before we did this, there was no chickens. So there was no chickens before. Now we allow chickens. You actually now are creating a possibility of a nuisance for that neighbor because of the odors coming across the property lines, the sounds, all that can create nuisance. And somebody may end up suing somebody else, and we're trying to kind of set buffer zones to say, you gotta have this much space, and you can't have them just pushed right up to your neighbor's house underneath their bedroom window. So,
And that all makes sense, but I'm really just talking about the difference between 4 and 6 chickens, not 0 or 20, just
yeah,
that
for me,
why,
it makes not a lot of sense for me either, because it's a difference of 1 chicken. From a half,
Right.
from less than a half to a half,
and like, what if somebody's got an acre lot right now and they've got 6 chickens, then we come by and we say, well, now you can only have 5 chickens. And
Well, they shouldn't have
and then
any
they go,
chickens.
well, why is that? And
because if they,
sure, but, I mean, really, like, we're trying to make these ordinances so that people can understand them, and they're very simple, and that was the goal. So I'm looking at this item and I'm going, I can't figure out why parcel size is tied. I could see, again, if we said enclosures per chicken need to be so big, but,
Right, or if it was a greater number, if it was, right, like you said, it was difference between 4 or 20 chickens, but 4 and 6 is pretty minimal. I see that. I see
right.
it. What do you think, Mike? Nothing?
we discussed it quite a bit, you know, if you want to change it when it comes time to it, you can do an amendment, and we'll just vote on it, and that'll determine it. You know, so I think that we've all said pretty much everything we need on it. I don't think there's anything else.
Okay. I mean, I was asking just to see if somebody had like a clear rationale. It sounds like this was just what Hudsonville did, and it was just a copy and paste. So if it's, I mean, if it's just a clerical thing of like, yeah, we just copied and pasted from somewhere else.
I'm not sure if it had the same number of chickens based on sizing, but it was that type of idea. I think it was in Hudsonville's. So I don't know if it was a direct copy and paste, but I don't remember it being like a difference of 1 chicken per differentiation of lot size, so. But that's the idea of it, is you're limiting by lot, so. But
Okay. Another question I had, 621I is the one with the farm stands and you have to have off-premise sales. And we had that conversation at the last meeting of, okay, so you can go out in the street and sell meat and eggs. Does that actually make sense in our ordinance structure? I mean, do we really want to keep that limitation? Is there a reason we want that limitation?
Oh, I just realized that we've got 2 ayes,
Yeah.
1 nose.
That second I should be a J,
Yeah, this,
Oh,
and I believe
yeah.
that's the one Dave is
thought
referring
it,
to.
yeah, because I'm like, I was reading aye,
Me too. And I was
like, that's not
okay.
2 ayes.
The one thing, if you're gonna allow people to sell product at their house, the zoning administrator, which is Lori from Costello from PCI, would have to make a determination on the number of trips that would generate, and it would qualify as a home business, and there's a permit process to operate a home business.
And that was another question I had. Do we generally allow farm stands? Do we support that as a city?
I don't know, I don't think we have any of that in town, do we? We have any
I've seen
farm stands?
farm
We had
stands.
one on Herkimer that received a zoning infraction letter from us. They stopped it, and then most recently, they've started up again.
I mean, are we looking to prohibit farm stands?
Well, I guess kind of for me, the thought behind this was that people could raise eggs for themselves. It was a kind of a homesteading thing. And so the idea of farm stands, I feel like, goes past what the original purpose of this was. That's kind of how I saw it. I guess I don't really know about.
I
how
guess I have
farm
seen
stands.
stands where people have put produce out, pickles, zucchini, that kind of stuff. But typically it's a stop by and pay, go. Or it's free, they've got so many zucchini, they
Yeah,
put
just
it out
take
for
some.
free, so. I think this is probably just protecting what Joel said about having a stand and all of that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is something that's probably was in a similar town's ordinance that Nick, borrowed from. Yeah, I mean, it's a policy question for council, farm stands and stuff like that, If it's not intrusive, then we're kind of hands off on that stuff. But if they put the farm stands and it's on the sidewalk and blocking pedestrian, kids able to ride their bikes down a sidewalk to see their best friend, 4 houses down, then those are the issues where we're kind of like, man, it's not really community oriented then.
If we open this in this ordinance, then we would have a difficult time saying somebody else couldn't sell vegetables or whatever else on a roadside stand,
Sweaters.
right? I know, where does that
I mean,
stop?
we limit yard sales. The number of yard sales one could have per year, stuff like that. So we do there's other instances where we currently limit, sales at a person's home.
I mean, personally, I'm not against farm stands. And in fact, I think that when I look at Allegan as a rural community so close to agriculture, it makes a lot of sense. And I don't think this ordinance in itself limits farm stands. I had a question about, do we allow farm stands in general? And then are we saying specifically you can't sell eggs or meat at a farm stand, but you can still sell eggs and meat like we said before, just drive across the street or go bring them to somebody's. So what's the difference between selling at a farm stand on premises and delivering to somebody's house? But all of this is in that context of, okay, we want our ordinances to be streamlined, understandable, rational. If this doesn't make any sense and we aren't really that concerned about that, then do we just take it out?
Do we limit kids with lemonade stands?
I do not.
What if they have it from the beginning of summer till the end of summer?
Still, I do not.
So what would be the difference of that and selling eggs? Because chickens are only gonna produce so many eggs.
So one of the differences is the sale of food requires a food license. And so there are cities that do regulate lemonade stands because they do not have a county food license. But that is something the city does not.
Well, lemonade it would be a consumable, so would that require a food license?
That's a perfect question for the county health department that oversees and administers the food license permit process.
So our ordinance is written for the county?
I don't understand your question, Mike.
If it's the county's job to enforce that, do we need something in our ordinance?
No,
The health department takes care of all the food permits.
yes.
So if we're not going around enforcing food stands, should we not put something in our ordinance that we don't plan to enforce is kind of where I'm going with this.
I don't have a problem with it, leaving it in there just to protect us more or less. And it's one of those, then if we see somebody then, and it's consistent, or consistently doing it, then we have ground to stand on.
So we don't want food stands in the city.
This says eggs or meat produced from chickens.
And that's what we're against, selling eggs at your house versus bringing them
In
somewhere.
butchering a chicken and selling it, yeah.
I don't see a problem with it, and I'm looking at all this process going, okay, we want to streamline these ordinances, simplify them, what are we really after here?
So the people that initially came to us was saying, can we have chickens because with the cost of eggs and everything at the food at the grocery store, it would be nice to be able to raise our own chickens for eggs. So the potential is that they're only gonna, 4 chickens or 6 chickens probably are not gonna raise enough eggs for people to sell or produce enough eggs for people to sell. But it doesn't matter to me either way. I don't see a problem with the way it is.
So do we have an ordinance that prohibits vegetable or sales? Joel, this is a Joel Parker question. Do we have, like, the Herkimer folks that
That was eggs.
are they selling eggs?
Yeah, they're selling eggs and
Okay.
chickens are running loose in their backyard,
Okay.
but they're on a corner street.
So, do we have an ordinance that says you can't have a roadside stand?
Not that I can tell, I just searched farm stands in our zoning ordinance and nothing popped up.
Okay.
I would advise council, I think Mayor Galloway made a good point there. A couple approached with an idea, to try to unravel their idea to see if there's other, pitfalls in this ordinance. We can broach those subjects as they come up. I mean, as former councilmember Charles Tripp always said, the ordinance is a living document. It's 2 public hearings to change, or 1 public hearing and 2 meetings to change something if you're tripping up on something down the road. I did look, the half acre, or quarter acre, half acre, that was in the City of Holland's ordinance. Their ordinance is easily searchable, so I just jumped to that because I know that was one she had also that she talked to staff about. And I know Nick reviewed that one as well. They've had a chicken ordinance now. I think they started that in 15 or 16 when I was up there. Maybe it might have been 14. So that's going on 8 years. And when I talk to my cohorts in that community, they don't have any issues. Still not a fan of it, but they say it's just fine, Joel. Relax. You'll be all right.
And we've had,
Going from 4 to 6, advice. Yeah, the standard DV, there's not much difference. It's not like going to 20 like Dave mentioned. And, if you want to remove those size limitations, that's fine. Parker just did a quick search. I was just curious. Are animals attracted to eggs? So if you have animals out on, or if you have eggs out by the road, or, is varmint going to be, attracted to it? His response was he can't find anything that, justifies that or doesn't justify it. They're more attracted to the actual chicken. So
And we've had chickens in the city for a long time now. And we haven't really had many problems. So I'm looking at the ordinance going, okay, if the parcel size isn't a problem for the chickens and the selling of the eggs, if we've got other things being sold, again, just trying to keep in the mindset of let's simplify these things, make them understandable for folks. I'm not sure what to make of the comment of it doesn't matter what we're doing with this right now because we can always change it later, because we're supposed to be going through the process of streamlining these right now. I thought that was the goal in all this. So I'm trying to pay attention to details and make sure that we're streamlining it.
Yeah, I get that. I would usually come from a place of it's easier to start off a little more strict, and then if we find we want to loosen it up, that makes it easier. My concern with taking J, I guess it would be item J out of here, is that what is it? Does it open up the door for other roadside stands that we don't really want, and we don't want a flea market downtown?
My perspective is it's bad government to make laws against things that aren't problems. Like, if you don't have a reason for a law, then you probably shouldn't make something illegal.
So I guess when we have the regular meeting and we do this, if we want to change it at that time, we can do a vote or reject the,
Correct. So this evening on the regular meeting, you have a second reading and public hearing on the chicken ordinance. After the public hearing, a motion can be made, I think Councilmember Hands referenced this, a motion can be made to amend the ordinance. You are allowed to amend the ordinance at that time, and you can vote on that amendment and then vote on the whole ordinance. So it'll be a two-motion step at that part, I believe. That's the way I would handle it.
So in this case, we have two or three suggestions for changes. And how do we,
2 amendments to the proposed ordinance.
would
Well,
we-
I'll offer a third one before we're done here.
okay. But how do we approach that as we're doing? Do we make all
Yeah, so-
3 amendments at the same time?
My recommendation is you offer each amendment separately. Because the majority of you might be really good by just going to 6. If I'm reading the room that you're good going to 6. However, the majority of you might not be okay with a farm stand idea. So you want to kill all 3 amendments if you're good with this one. It's like ranked choice voting.
Yeah, right,
You really want this one, if you can't have that,
yeah,
So that would be my recommendation, 1 amendment at a time.
okay.
Yeah, the permit and fee, I still don't see any value in those.
so I did ask about that. Nick recommends we do have a permit process.
I saw that, yeah.
The cost yet, I'm still,
It seems like a waste of time and money. I mean, what I hear in Nick's rationale is, okay, if you've got a permit, then you can revoke the permit. But that still doesn't mean, okay, so I look at a few things. I go, okay, people have chickens right now and we aren't doing anything about it. And why, if we've got authority to remove the chickens today by ordinance and we don't do it, why would we do that later? And the other thing I think is, okay, day one when this ordinance goes into effect, are we gonna go around to everybody and say, hey, you need to pay us $10 and fill out this form if you wanna keep your chickens? Because that doesn't sound like again, it doesn't sound like good government to me. And it feels like when I see the clause on the permit and I compare that to the ordinance, if I look at the ordinance after the permit, I see issuance of permit is approval of the application is complete and the requirements set forth in this chapter are satisfied. So the ordinance seems to imply that when you get the permit, it means you've satisfied all the requirements. But then the form says, this doesn't mean you've satisfied all the requirements. So it's not telling people, yeah, you've got everything you need to have chickens, we checked it out and you're all good. It's just a form they fill out and they pay us $10 for the privilege of filling it out, and then we have to store it later. And what happens when somebody fills out the permit, it gets approved, and then we come back and say, oh, no, you've got XYZ wrong and you can't keep your chickens anymore. And they go, well, I got this permit. And they say, well, it doesn't matter. But I paid $10 for the permit, and go, it doesn't matter. It just feels like, again, bad government to me. It seems like a waste of time and money.
So I mean, I struggled with going back and forth. I went back and forth on this as well. But if we don't have a permit, if we're not issuing a permit, how do we enforce this ordinance?
Just like every other ordinance. I mean, there's rules about dogs in here. We don't have permits for dogs, but if people
We have
break.
dog licenses though, right?
We don't have permits for dogs. But if somebody violates the ordinance, we can enforce that ordinance. I mean, that shouldn't be a limiting thing. And again, today, we've got ordinances that we can enforce without a permit.
So one thing I would like to note in Nick's email is you can't suspend the right to engage in the activity altogether as a punishment for past violations. If we don't have the permit, we can't suspend that right. Yeah, there's a whole zoning, process we go through there. The permit also makes it easier for us when a neighbor calls and says, hey, my neighbor's got chickens running around their backyard. It'll take us all about 34 seconds to type in the BSNA, the address, pull it up. Well, they have a permit. Oh, okay. So it gives staff a tool to, lack of a better phrase, monitor that chicken activity. Especially when neighbors call us, and we do have neighbors call us often. So that's one reason why cities all over West Michigan that allow chickens, urban farming like this, require a permit. And it's really a best management practice when you look at other municipalities and the processes they do. Similar to food trucks, we require them to do an annual permit. This isn't an annual permit, this is just a one-time permit. Similar to how we require, contractors, if they're gonna work on someone's house, pull permit, for electric, plumbing, et cetera. Having people come in, I think the form that Michaela developed from scratch is a really good form. It highlights, initial here, initial here, initial here. So the people who are doing the chickens, they're stating outright, yeah, we know what we're supposed to do here. And in a way, in my opinion, it kind of legitimizes it a little bit for a use that's atypical in a city. It would be our recommendations that you stay with the permit.
And I think I would have to add to that is kind of just to summarize what Joel said. If we don't have a permit, we really have no control who has chickens. So if the house over here wanted to put chickens in his yard who doesn't have a fence or anything,
But that
we're
would,
not going to know that.
well, so again, we're a complaint-driven community, right? Like, if nobody complains about those chickens, it's fine. Are we gonna be in the business of going around? I mean, we know people have chickens right now. Do we know everybody who has chickens? And are we gonna go and make them have a permit day one? Or are we gonna wait till somebody complains and then go enforce it because they don't have a permit, even though they meet all the other requirements?
I would hope that once this goes out, that people would come down and say, I have 4 chickens running in my yard, can I fill out my permit? Or even if they lie and say, I'm planning on getting 4 chickens, you know, hopefully they would fill out a permit.
How would they know that?
I'm sure it will be in the newspaper.
So, again, we're
And
gonna
I'm
be.
sure the people who have, excuse me, Dave, I'm sure the people who have chickens know that they're probably not supposed to have them in the city. I would almost bet that our law enforcement has probably been there.
I don't know. I really don't. I mean, if nobody's complained about the chickens, I don't know if they would go there or how that works.
I don't know.
So would we actually, if somebody met all the other requirements, but they didn't know to fill out the permit, would we then go and take their chickens away? Would we say, oh, you don't have the permit filled out, now you're done?
I
You'd
would
probably-
think it would be no different than giving them a warning by someone visiting saying, we don't show a permit on record. Will you fill out this permit? Or come down to City Hall, fill out a permit, and it'll cost you $10 or whatever we decide on.
Even though they met all the other requirements, still gotta come down and fill out that permit and
Sure.
pay us $10. On the flip side of it, if somebody filled out the permit, paid $10, checked all the boxes, and then somebody complained and we found out, oh yeah, you're only 4 feet from the property line, 21 feet from that, would we then say, well, the permit doesn't really matter, even though you filled it out and paid $10, you still gotta get rid of your chickens here?
No, they would have, probably, we would give them the option to fix the problem. I mean, in
So,
our, go ahead.
sorry about that.
No, that's okay, go ahead.
There's something that's been missed in the past 3 months with this council about code enforcement. And our objective is always compliance, not punishment. And that is part of the DNA of what Allegan is. I mean, it is through our police department, when they're doing their investigations, I mean, they write 10% of the vehicles they pull over for traffic violations end up with a ticket. We are compliance focused, not punishment focused. So your scenario, staff would be instructed, if it's 4 feet off the thing and not 5, and the neighbor's really angry, and we have a survey, we can prove it's 4 feet, because that fence line just happens to be right on that property line. We would say, you need to relocate it. You typically get 10 days. Well, I can't do 10 days because I'm going on vacation this week. Okay, can you get it done in 2 weeks or 3 weeks? You know, we work with people in regards to that.
So the permit, to me, doesn't play much of a role in that. What I heard earlier was, okay, if we get a call on a place and they've got a permit, then we go, okay, they've got a permit, we're good. But I'm not seeing in this process like a review on site to say you've met all the requirements. I'm seeing like a check. It's sort of an honor system on the permit, right? Unless I'm missing something, is it just?
It's a
somebody-
permit where they initial each section that says they've read and they understand where it has to be located. So if we find out that they don't locate it, you know, let's say they locate right up next to the fence and right, which is within 15 feet of the neighbor's house, because they want to preserve the majority of their backyard for their kids to play in. Then we'll say, you know, this isn't what you agree to. You need to relocate it to this appropriate location.
Yeah, even though we approved your permit already, look, this is wrong, you gotta relocate it.
Correct. Just like when you pull a building permit for your house, and you thought you could put the stringers in backwards, and it's all said and done, and I paid PCI the money, and they come out and they say, what were you thinking? This is not how stair stringers are supposed to be, you know, positioned. You have to correct this. I can't say, well, you've already given me the permit. So, I mean, again, you had a young couple that wants to raise chickens to provide eggs because egg prices are high. And also I'd probably say there's probably some people that want to do it just because they think it's a cool thing to do. We
They're
know
good for
of one.
bugs.
What?
They eat bugs,
Yeah. They eat bugs.
yeah, so,
No more pest control that you needed in your backyard.
exactly, right.
There's a good one. I think the process laid out is a best management practice followed by local governments throughout West Michigan. They brought examples of ordinances. Our city attorney, who's well-versed in municipal law, looked at other options. I'm sure as he developed this. And what we have is, in my opinion, a very straightforward ordinance. The people know what's expected if they're going to, raise chickens in the city of Allegan. I struggle to see where it's unclear. And it's not going to be burdensome on our staff to process that application. No more burdensome when someone wants to rent Mayhan gazebo for a wedding. Or, have a 5K run through the city.
Still struggling to see the value of the permit. I'm all for chickens. I actually want to make it simpler for people to have chickens. I think people have chickens now and it's not a problem. So I don't know why we're talking about how important it is and how these people wanted to have chickens. I'm all in favor of that. Just trying to make sure I'm trying to make sure I'm justifying what we're requiring of people here. And I can't see a justification for the permit and the fee.
My main justification of the permit, and I think Bill had the same one, is it informs the person when they come get it what the rules are. That's my main purpose is, here's the rules, here's where you gotta have stuff. So we don't get later, 5 years down the road, well, I didn't know that I couldn't put it right up against the fence line. Well, the permit, and you agreed to it, it had to be 5 feet off the property line and 25 feet from another building. Yeah, it's in our ordinance, and technically, being, not knowing the law is not an excuse. But nonetheless, we're trying to be proactive instead of post-active, which is something that I've also heard a lot of council members wanting, which is be proactive in our enforcement, proactive with the citizenship so that they know what the rules are, so we get less need for enforcement. So that was my whole thought on the permit. Whether there's a fee or not, don't really care. The only thing I have on the farm stand is the Right to Farm Act. Did Nick review that with that on farm stands? And the whole nose under the camel's tent once we allow some agriculture in our residential districts? And what
So-
that could open us up to other things?
So we did have conversations regarding the Right to Farm Act in the state of Michigan. I'm going to use the words I recall, or I think I recall what his discussion was. Unless the majority of that lot is for farming purposes, you really don't get the shield of the Right to Farm Act protections. So the Right to Farm Act protections is really developed to protect what I'm going to call generation farmers, small farmers in townships outside metro areas where there is burgeoning suburban growth. And all of a sudden, developers and local governments are saying, you gotta stop farming because now we're all a bunch of houses and strip malls. You need to protect that generational kind of farmer. And so Nick was like, Joel, you have a concern that's not really here. People don't have the right to farm in the city per se, unless we have a historical farm where the majority of that property is farming.
Well, going by a couple other law firms' opinions on it, that once you allow it in a residential, it can have some issues and
Some precedents,
and the whole farm stand may also come into play there. Because I'll have to look more into it, but I know that the Right to Farm Act does have some leeway, even though it's not traditionally. You could easily convert more than half your lot to farming. You just start doing a bunch of vegetables and chickens, and now you're more than 50% of your land. So it's a complete possibility. So I don't really care about the farm stands one way or another. If we want to develop that in the future and just say this is what's allowed is a stand this size by this size, it's got to be this far off the sidewalk, go to town. There really, as far as I know, there isn't necessary an agriculture or a food inspection that would necessarily be necessary. I'd have to look at the small, like farmers market type people, because a lot of that kind of goes around and is exempt from that because they're not at scale. So it might not even fall under needing a county food license because you're not doing prepared food.
the State of Michigan cottage law.
I'm not sure about the chicken eggs, that would be the only thing, but farm as vegetables, it's probably not gonna fall under any food permit needed. But, all right, I'm done with this.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Dave?
No, those are my only amendments,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything about that?
No.
Okay. Any other roundtable discussion before we move on? Do you have anything else? Peter, do you have anything? Mike? Okay. We'll go on down to the next item, which is the high-level presentation of the fiscal year 2024 budget. Tracy going to take this, or Joel?
I will begin and get
Okay.
it going, and Tracy will speak up and correct
Great.
as she sees fit. Again, this is high-level discussion that we're gonna have. This is not your budget review. Those happen in a couple weeks in April on your calendar. And we'll share those dates with you again at the end of this presentation. I can grab it here, buddy. So real quick is a list of topics I want to cover with council tonight. I'm going to hit on some budgeting philosophies. We will review your draft fiscal year 2024 goals. Those were emailed out to you after your strategic planning session. I got quite a few thanks, but we never really had council vote on them or adopt them, so I'm using the word draft. We'll share some budget tenets that Tracy and I share or we agree on. And then we'll get into the budget development process, the building blocks of our budget, where we are with projected revenue and expenses, our current debt schedule we want to highlight, the current capital improvement schedule for this upcoming fiscal year. And then, as I mentioned, we'll talk about our budget workshops coming up next month. This is the 6th budget that Tracy and I have prepared together for the Allegan City Council. So one thing we really want to highlight at the very beginning is we are a complex organization. We have many, many cogs in our machine spinning, and they all got to spin together. And what we want to share with council is let's not miss the forest for the trees.
You just had to use that phrase, didn't you?
Yep.
You just had.
Just had to use that phrase. We need to focus on the entirety of the city, and we can't do that if we're preoccupied. I stole this picture from the Milbacher Armatrout Preserve website, and it's a great picture, I think, for this statement, because you have that one tree on the right side that's really unfocused, and it grabs your eye right away. And if you focus just on that, you miss that really cool town in the background and all the forested land behind it. So another philosophy or antidote we have is the budget really is a planning tool. You know, it's developed in a way that we view it as directions for a road trip. How's the city going to get to where it wants to go, and how does the city plan on paying to get there? We also have to be cognizant, though, with all road trips, we are going to run into detours. We're going to have emergencies, flat tires will pop up here and there. So with that in mind, the budget and the people responsible for the budget, we're going to have to be flexible and nimble. We're going to have to be able to respond to any unplanned emergency that comes along our way over the next, fiscal year, as with every budget. These are your draft goals for the upcoming year. I sent this via email back in January. You will have to formally adopt these at some time. You can formally adopt them in your approval of the budget, because they are listed in your budget if you'd like to do it that way. But if there's some discussion that council would like to have regarding this, you can also have discussion as a group as well. These 4 bullet points really guide Tracy when she is, advising and putting the budget together with me, and they really guide me as well. The first thing is we want to be efficient and effective to minimize costs to our taxpayers. My leadership team routinely hears me make comments of, I understand this is a cost, but it's going to be a benefit for our residents. And at the end of the day, we're here to serve the residents and the businesses that call Allegan home. Visitors as well, but it's the residents and the businesses for Joel that call Allegan home on who I am serving first. We are going to fund ongoing operating expenditures with ongoing revenue sources. Through Tracy's spreadsheet, she is constantly ensuring that we are operationally balanced before we jump into our capital improvements and all the fun projects that we want to do in the city of Allegan. We need to maintain a sufficient general fund reserve to meet unanticipated financial needs. Historically, for the city of Allegan, when I first showed up here, the rule of thumb was always have more than $1 million in our general fund balance, or 20%. We typically have more than that, mostly because Tracy conservatively budgets revenues and expenses to avoid any budget shortfalls. So when you look at our budget, we want you to keep those four things at the front of your mind on, what's guiding us as we put this together from a staff level. Everyone here has been part of the budget development process. You understand we start in January with your strategic planning session, then our department heads get their pencils out and calculators out, and they go to town between January and March, working with Tracy and me. And then in April, we have council reviewing the whole budget, and then it's adopted in May. It's a big budget in regards to the number of funds we have. We don't have just one account, but we have 12 different funds that make up the budget. Our general fund, which funds the majority of our general government operations, our perpetual care fund, which is for cemetery maintenance. It just slowly grows each year. We don't dip into it. Our major street funds, which funds projects to improve the major streets in the city of Allegan, not the trunk lines, but the major streets. So River, Industrial, Delano, Water Street, those are our major streets, our collector roads. Our local streets, which are our neighborhood streets, grants fund, our DDA fund, our Positively Allegan fund. The capital reserve fund is the interest that's been earned off the Seeking Reserve Fund. The capital reserve fund is north of $200,000 right now. That's a fund council's allowed to dip into by a majority vote of council. The Sinking Reserve Fund is the fund that you have to get voter approval to dip into. Wastewater, I'm making sure I didn't flip those two, so I looked at Tracy, and she shook her head yes, so I did not flip those. Our wastewater, as we call it, our sewer fund, and then our water fund and motor vehicle pool fund. Something to keep in mind, money is not easily transferred between funds. So we can't just, take a ladle and dip into one barrel and move it over here and then move this barrel over here. The general fund can transfer money into any fund, but moving money from the general back into the general fund can only be done through a form of a charge for services or an inter-fund loan. Fire away.
What does that mean?
What does what mean? Charge of services? So an inter-fund loan. So the perpetual care fund has $170,000 in it. If we had a project come up where we just had no money, an emergency popped up, and we had no money in our general fund to pay for this improvement, we could take a loan from our perpetual care at reasonable market rates, so you can't do it for 0%, and then over the years, pay it back. I don't think Allegan's ever done that before.
Perpetual care we have.
You have done perpetual care, yeah. Okay. Holland did perpetual care often. They dipped into perpetual care for neighborhood projects, like little cute pocket parks and stuff like that, on a pretty regular basis.
Okay, and we would see this as like a budget adjustment then?
Oh, yeah.
Tracy, when it comes up? Okay.
Yeah, you would see it, I mean, and you would approve it. I mean, so not just a budget adjustment, like a second quarter budget adjustment, but it would be an actionable item where council would have to make a decision. I don't foresee us having to do this anytime.
Okay.
And Tracy would never recommend it, so.
Thank you.
What we want to give you is where we are with the numbers right now for fiscal year '24, which is the third column from the right. So this is the revenue spreadsheet that Tracy puts together. We're looking at about 5.7 million and some change in the general fund. And then when you include the other funds, that takes us to a total budget of 16.6 million. This is a breakdown on where that revenue all comes from. So as you can see, utilities, so our water rates and our sewer rates, our septage receiving and industrial receiving is the largest contributor to our revenue, 36%. And you can just break it down. Property taxes comes in next. And then we can jump down to charge for services, then grants and loans. State revenue is low compared to the other ones. The street fund, that is our Act 51 funds.
It's major and local.
That's major and local, so that's, Act 51 goes in there, and plus some transfer of funds goes into there as well. Licensing and permits, those are like our building permits and our fees we get for the services we provide. These are the expenditures, so we're looking at high level right now for the general fund, 6.4 million. We're gonna use some general fund balance to cover that cost. And when you add up all the other funds, we're looking at a total of $17.5 million being expended in the upcoming fiscal year. You can see the big grants or the big projects associated with the downtown streetscape and the streets, as well as wastewater, water, and then this also jumps into Hubbard and the M89, M40 roundabout plan. However, when you just look at on functions, we have 47% for operating, personnel is 27%. So when you combine those two together right there, 74%, so about 3/4 of our expenditures are keeping the city moving forward. And about 1/4 is left over for investment for capital improvement. And this is a graph that we have carried forward since 2012 or 4 when you started. So you can go back to your budget books from last year and see these numbers, these pie charts. They're even the same colors. This is a breakdown of the costs, a little more detailed for expenditures that we have to give to the state of Michigan. That's part of our CVRTS stuff.
No, it's just the state reporting for the F-65.
Yep, thank you. State reporting for the F-65 form. If you guys know what the F-65 form is, thumbs up to you. But this is a reporting we have to give to them. Legislative and general government, that 1.7, that's city hall work. 1.9, public safety is our police department, our EMS contribution, and our fire district contribution. Public works, 6.5, that's Doug Cosbin's, the DPW. Hop over, you can see our sewer at 4.4 and our water at 5.2. And then recreation and culture, which is the remaining of Doug's at, 350,000. Fund balance. So we mentioned earlier, one of our goals is to have, an appropriate fund balance set aside. I mentioned we'd like to be north of $1 million and 20-ish%. You can see up there for our general fund, it's 2.5 million and 40%. We're comfortable with this fund balance. We don't want it to go below 2.5 million right now until we get through the next 2 years of construction projects. We think that's a safe number for us to be at. When it's all said and done and you add all of our funds together, we're looking at roughly 6.4. Keep in mind, this 2.5, that's hands off. That can only be accessed if the voters vote for something, and then there is a limit on what we can ask for that one as well. The 216 is the reserve funding where I mentioned before, if something came up and you needed some money, you may be able to justify going into this fund balance here. Any questions on that stuff? And again, in April, we're gonna have 2 workshop sessions to really dive in and see all the breakdown of the department head, the departments, the various accounts as well. So the high priority capital improvement projects,
Excuse me a
Yeah.
second. When are you planning on giving us the figures before April? Just so we can kind of look at them, even if it's a draft and not the final, any time frame?
I wish
So,
I didn't,
like,
I wish I didn't answer
It would
for
be
you.
nice if we
So I have-
had, I don't know,
I
a couple
have
weeks
the
maybe?
budget done, all my spreadsheets are done, I just don't have the book developed yet. But I
So-
could share,
It would be easiest if we could just print, would it be okay if we print off? Because we can print off the spreadsheets as a PDF
yeah.
and email those to council. And that way you can start seeing the numbers.
That would be fine with me. I don't need a big fancy book to look at.
Yeah,
I mean,
you just want,
can do
email would
that.
be
Yeah.
fine,
I
just
can do that
to,
tomorrow if you guys want.
yeah.
I'm fine with digital.
Are you okay if we go that route?
yeah.
My only hesitation was, I was just thinking about the spreadsheet with the 47 tabs at the bottom. We don't want to send them that, because that, you won't know what your tabs would be hard, but we could get you a breakdown just like that.
That's all I was thinking of.
Sure.
In that, Trace, could you include, I know the account numbers changed or the fund numbers changed.
Yes.
Can you include what goes with what for us?
Yes.
Thank you. Great. It's not a lot of extra work?
No.
Okay, all right.
I'm going to ask you to take all the revenue and break the revenue down by department already, so that's the more painful task that we're going to work on.
Okay, well, we didn't ask for that.
I know, but Joel did.
I'll send you what I have, and then if there's more or different ways you want to look at it, because there's a bunch of tabs.
No, that's fine. At least to start.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I would offer, just like we've offered at every council meeting, call City Hall, set up a meeting. We will sit with you in a conference room, project the numbers onto a TV screen, and just go down line by line with council on where we are and how we got to what we got.
Yeah, I have a lot of backup for all of the revenue numbers that I've come up with, all the payroll numbers I've come up with. So there's lots of backup documentation for pretty much every line item that, is major, so.
So, the title's a little misleading, high priority capital improvement projects. I just meant that to be the high dollar capital improvement projects. So I'm not listing that we've set aside $5,000 in each of our departments for technology improvements, because someone's computer is gonna break or something like that. So the high dollar capital improvement projects, the design and site work for an 8-unit T hangar at the airport, high dollar, but the state and the federal government covers 95% of that cost. So it's low dollar to us, but it's a big dollar project. Crack seal at the airport, riverfront boardwalk structural rehabilitation. You'll recall you contract with Abonmarche to do an investigation. They're developing the bid documents right now. We hope to go out to bid within a month on that project. And then we will, correct the deficiencies that's in that riverfront bridge. I do have tuck pointing at the Griswold Auditorium listed. It's about $75,000 to $80,000 in damage there that we have to address. That has been added to the budget for this year. New HVAC system at the Regent Theater. We're having some issues with the current HVAC system. It pulls off a well, and then we deposit that coolant bypass water. It's pure water, so I use the word coolant like it's a bad thing. It's pure water, but we put that bypass water into the Kalamazoo River. That requires staff time to report the temperature, the pH level, and the volume every day we use it for our NPDES permit through Eagle. So we think it's time for us to make the investment. Todd Heckman is concerned about the quality of that well. I think it's 80 years old? Yeah. 1940s? So if my math is correct, just a little over 80 years. So it's time to look into that. Continued work from fiscal year '23 into downtown. As you guys all know, that's a 2-summer project. Traffic circle at M89, M40 Hubbard, majority of that's being paid for by the state, but the city does have costs associated with that. Painting the western water tower on Water Tower Hill, and purchasing the new salt truck for the DPW. This is a current debt schedule, so this is also always in the budget as well. Tracy and I just spent some time this afternoon and put it into a quick table that might be a little easier for council to read. You can kind of see where the money's gone in the past and what year the bonds will be paid off. Some administrative changes that we're making in the upcoming year. We are moving to an Affordable Care Act compliant health plan. Through this plan, the city will continue with paying 80% of the premium as required under the State of Michigan Revenue Sharing Program. We will continue to fully fund the deductible for all insured policies. We are going to offer a one-time bonus of $1,000 to each primary insured employee. We are going to offer a one-time bonus equal to the annual amount that an employee will pay if 20% of their contribution is higher than what they are paying this year. Both the police unions have agreed to these changes, and we're meeting with the SEIU 517M union in early April. So we're working on the memorandum. And then as part of this also is we're going to offer a 3% cost of living adjustment wage increase for all employees due to this healthcare change. Both unions are scheduled for a 2% increase. So for them to go to 3%, we have to get that memorandum of understanding between the unions and the city. This is going to save the city approximately $92,000 a year.
For the first year or
It will save $40,000 this year because we're doing all these one-time bonuses, and it will be $92,000 a year after that, dependent on health insurance increases.
There you go.
Depending on health insurance increases. But we're always at a 80-20, which is a requirement through the state of Michigan for us to receive our full revenue sharing participation check from the state. So as it goes up equally that way. I would also offer that of all the employees, about 25% will see a higher monthly premium. 75% of the employees will see a lower premium. So the other administrative change that council approved is to reduce the pension contribution from the city of Allegan to MERS. So when you voted on this when I was on vacation, you're just stretching out our agreement with MERS 5 years. So what that does is it reduces our costs from $330,000 last year to a $260,000 contribution this year. So that is a $70,000 savings from last year. And then we're going to meet April 12th at 5:30, where the police department, the Department of Public Works, and Water Utilities will go over their individual budgets. Tracy and I will be here for that meeting. And then we'll meet again on Thursday, April 20th, the next week, where we will hit the finance department, city manager, and anything else that council may need. So Tracy will go ahead and send out the numbers budget. It won't have any of the text or the flair in it, so you can start wrapping your head around that. Heavily encourage council to reach out to Tracy and I if you have any questions about the numbers. Reach out to us with any questions that may come up between now and April 12th, so we can make sure we have the right answers, the informed answers for you during that budget review. And that's what I wanted to share with council this evening.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Joel? Or Tracy? Seeing none, let's move on down to the next item on the agenda, which is the review of the February revenue, excuse me, and expenditure report. Anybody see anything they wanted to ask about on that? Okay. Gotcha. Mike? David, did you see anything on that?
No, thanks.
Okay. Did you guys have anything to say about that? Anything you want to point out? Okay. Great, thank you. And then next on the agenda is the review of the council agenda. It has been amended to add 11E5. So when we approve that in the meeting, we'll have to do that. And then we'll have to excuse council members Morgan and Andrus. If there is nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting at 6:41 and reconvene the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. Thank you. It is 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the regular council meeting to order. Michaela, would you do a roll call for us, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zeter,
Present?
Councilmember Hands,
Present?
Councilmember Andrus, Councilmember Redding,
Here.
Councilmember Morgan, Mayor Pro Tem Byrd,
Here.
and Mayor Galloway.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to excuse Councilmembers Morgan and Andrus.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this time, if we could all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. The excuse me, 4A, approval of the regular council meeting agenda for March 27th, 2023. We do have an amendment where we have added 11E.5.
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is number 5, approval of the minutes. 5A, approval of the study session minutes from March 13th, 2023 council meeting. Was there anything on that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 5B, approval of the regular meeting minutes from March 13th, 2023 council meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as is.
Second?
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is number 8, the public hearings and adoption of ordinance. 8A is the second reading, public hearing, and adoption of ordinance 501 to amend Chapter 6, Animals of the City of Allegan Code Ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor Galloway.
Thank you.
This evening is your second reading of Ordinance 508, which is to amend Chapter 6 of the city's Code of Ordinances, addressing animals in the city of Allegan. Tonight, you'll be having a public hearing. There are several changes to this ordinance that I can highlight. One talks about our reasonable control of an animal. It provides that only dogs and cats are the only domestic animals that may be kept outside at residential premises. It talks about no more than 3 domestic animals may be kept at a single premise. It talks about allowing people that are in charge of the animal to sanitarily dispose of any feces that may occur when caring for that dog outside the premise. And then probably the biggest change is to allow the keeping of chickens on a residential property. As discussed during the pre-session, you can have anywhere from 4 to 6 chickens, depending on the size of your lot. The chickens shall be provided with a covered enclosure, and the placement of that enclosure can be no closer than 5 feet to any property line, and it shall be located no closer than 25 feet to any residential structure. Chickens may be allowed to roam outside of the covered or fenced enclosure if within a fully fenced side or rear yard. So those are the big changes to this ordinance. This does require a public hearing.
Go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:04. Close the public hearing at 7:05. So we need a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying
We need
aye.
discussion time on that.
And we vote on the motion first, right?
No, since there's, when you have a motion and support, there's opportunity for discussion.
Okay.
So there's a
excuse
motion on
me,
the
I thought it was
floor.
the other way around, sorry. Okay,
So now I can offer
now we
amendments.
can discuss it, correct?
Now would be the time for me to offer amendments.
Correct. So now would be the time to offer amendments. And as discussed during the pre-session, my recommendation is to offer the amendments one at a time and vote on each individual. Unless you want to, unless the person making the motion wants to combine them all together, it's at their discretion.
No, once we get a motion in a second, we can,
I can offer an amendment to your motion, you can choose to accept it. So first, 621A, I make the amendment to say just people can have up to 6 chickens.
is that a motion now? We need a second for that? How does,
Yes.
okay. I'll second that.
It has been moved and supported. Any further discussion?
I would just reiterate, this is just to simplify. I think it's still in line with goals, it's a reasonable limit.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Another amendment I'd like to offer, I guess this one gets confusing because it's 621, the second I. My proposal would be to just remove the second I.
Any conversation? It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
No.
Aye.
Okay. Third amendment to offer would be,
Did you get that, Michaela? Motion failed.
I was supposed to remove sections 622, 623, 624.
It's the permit stuff, just for clarification.
Support.
Any discussion?
I just go back and forth on this and, sorry, Dave. Yeah, I mean, last week when we took our straw poll, I was in favor of not having the permit. But, I don't know, hearing back from Nick makes me feel like, and actually, maybe can we have, since Chief Gibson's here, can we have him speak to this, to how, does it help their enforcement at all? Don't mean to put you on the spot there, Jay.
No, that's fine. This is more of
I need you to come to the podium. We're recorded live. Thank you.
So right now, as it stands, this was a zoning issue that you're making into ordinance, correct? Which would then fall into my purview. I thought the discussion that you've had so far is thoughtful. I will say that I understood both sides on the permit issue. I'm just thinking out loud now. I prefer the permit process. I don't think it to be overly cumbersome. To, I think Joel's point maybe, I work with a lot of people on ordinances. Even like tickets downtown, I rip up the first one. Don't put that in the paper. I rip it up, because the goal is not to have the ticket, the goal is the compliance piece. If somebody had an issue with their chickens or any piece of that permit, I would go, hey, just so you know, you may not have known, but you should have, you signed this, we need to work on this. And generally, by having a good discussion and dialogue with folks, you can get things done. I know there's people that have chickens in town, I've seen them, I didn't get out of my car to go, or my truck to go track where they were at. But, so the permit piece I like, but again, I'm not a voting member of the council, if that
That's
provides any
helpful.
clarity.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah,
Thank you, Jay.
And I think sorry,
No, go ahead.
the point, I don't remember who made, if it was Peter. I lost my train of thought. It was, that Bill had brought up, that it gives us the opportunity to give them the rules and ensure that they understand what it says. I don't know how we would do that outside of having some sort of permitted process.
Same with me, I'm kind of where Roger was. I voted no permit or poll when did the poll last meeting. I've said no, but then and I did question it, and that was how I found out about Nick's response. I just think it's more forceful and maybe holding them more accountable if they have to fill out that permit paperwork. So. Any more discussion? Okay, we do have a motion on the floor to remove
Well,
those.
if I can
Oh, yep, go ahead.
still provide discussion. It's, to me, it still seems like we're wasting time and money on this. I don't see it as being relevant to the enforcement of the ordinances. I heard Elizabeth Decco's name get invoked a lot, and she was pretty clear that she didn't see much value in the permit and the fee either. So if we're talking about her vision for this, there's a lot of ordinances that don't require permitting that we can still enforce. I don't believe the permit helps our enforcement. If we're talking about educating people about our ordinances, I'm also very supportive of that. I don't think they need to pay us $10 and we need to file a permit that we have to keep at City Hall in order to educate people. I think we can educate people without that. But I don't know what that process looks like. Which still brings me back to how will people know about these permits? Day one, what will be our outreach process for that? So from my perspective, I think we're overcomplicating this thing. And I get that $10 is not a lot of money and that the permit isn't a terribly long permit, but again, without clear value for it, it just seems like bad government to me.
Anything else? Anything else? Okay. We have a motion on the floor to eliminate sections 22 to 24. And it's been seconded. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye. Motion failed. Okay. All right.
Now you vote on the original motion.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to accept ordinance 508 as amended. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we'll open the floor for public comment. If there's any public comment. Seeing none, close the public comment. Next on the agenda is 11, reports from boards, commissions, and city offices. First on the agenda is the Planning Commission. And I'll take this since Roger was absent, unless you want to do it. And exactly, that's about all there was. The only thing we really talked about was, sounds like we are ready to send the draft of the master plan document to council. The planning commission reviewed it and voted on it with a couple extra, just a few little typos and so.
Before council was the series of public meetings.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Joe.
You are welcome.
All right, next on the agenda is the Finance Department. Accounts payable and receivables, or, I'm sorry, payables and payroll. Roger?
Yes, we have accounts payable in the amount of $202,271.34, and a payroll in the amount of $108,965.61, for a total disbursement of $311,236.95. I make a motion to approve.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Discussion,
Oh, yep.
real quickly, what's this January and February charter for $2,600? Is that like for a year? It's like, I just was looking through it, and I'm like, how do we have a $2,600 charter bill? Charter communications. I didn't know if we're installing new service or. That's the only one that really poked up to me.
I can't believe I didn't catch that.
Tracy, are you happen on BSNA? Okay, thank you.
Check 2960.
So that's January and February's payments for all of our accounts altogether.
But there's also check 2959 and 2961, which are also charter for January and February for the 223 Hubbard. So is it just excluding 223 Hubbard?
Correct.
Correct. So for charter, that is our phone service account. Correct, Tracy? Because they used to be individual accounts till we met with Spectrum representatives in late November, and we asked them to combine all of our accounts into one account.
Right.
So then is that divided out into separate funds then?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
split up into a bunch of different funds. But from now on, it's gonna be all on one bill, and because we were like transitioning, plus we also had, when they combined all of our bills, they put anything that said Allegan in town on our bill. So had the fire district on there and stuff like that, but they fixed that and on this new bill, so. It's been a hot mess, but
I'd
the
never expect
majority
that
of
from
the
charter.
bills are on the $2,000, or the, whatever check number that was, 2960. And then the other ones are just 223 Hubbard and,
Is that for the cash machine? What do we have a charter bill for the bathroom?
So 223 Hubbard is our Wi-Fi we have down on the riverfront,
Cameras.
our cameras, and we have a separate Wi-Fi just for city staff, because when we hop on the public Wi-Fi down there when we're doing musical events like New Year's Eve. We don't get the bandwidth that we need to be
Gotcha.
able to project.
Now, when we're doing the streetscape, we are putting in conduits, so I'm hoping we can fiber between our buildings here eventually and stop paying, $119 a month to each one of our buildings here, but I'll address that with
Let's-
Tracy in the
Yeah, let's go
future.
back to that, because we do have a motion on the floor, okay? Any more questions on accounts payable? Okay. The motion has been made and approved. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the request to approve a grant application from the police department for MCOLES, is it? Public Safety Academy Assistance Program.
Yes, so there is, as you can see, there's funding of Michigan, MCOLES is the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. They are who certifies every police officer in the state once they receive the proper training. We have an opening in our department. We reached out to several of the academies in the area, and I think it was all but two, I was told, of the candidates were all sponsored. It's the way of the world now to try to recruit. This grant recently changed 2 weeks ago. This grant had already been in place for that dollar amount, but they only allowed $4,000 to go towards salary, and the rest of it had to go towards the academy. Well, it was disproportionate because the salaries generally were more than what the academy was. So I've done, we'd had a recruit, or somebody that has wanted to be a police officer a long time, lives in the area, but it just never worked. I looked for a candidate that would be able to start sooner because we're going to be short all summer. But that didn't seem to work. So this grant, which is first come, first served basis, will pay, if I've done my math correct, and I'm thinking I'm relatively close, will cover everything that we need except for maybe $3,000. So with the piece about us being short during the summer, I went to all of us that work days and told us that we're all going to work a 2-week pay period on nights to cover, myself included, because I knew some of them probably wouldn't be very excited, and I said, well, I'm doing it, so we're all going to do it. But this is the sponsorship, the Sheriff's Department, not that we're comparing or anything, the Sheriff's Department is sponsoring 3 to the same academy that haven't gone to a police academy. There's a lot of departments that, so it's difficult for a department our size to sometimes get a lot of candidates, and we didn't with our last round of interviews. I think I interviewed 4 people. So I believe this is the smart way to go. I talked to the city manager, said, hey, my window's really short here because the academy's in May, and if we're gonna do it, I wanted to do it. I didn't wanna wait till fall academy started, and then we're pushing till Christmas time before we have somebody we're short for that period of time. So there's been a lot of moving parts, but it's $24,000. I see no reason we don't get the grant. Janelle has done all the paperwork. I've helped her a little bit, but it's all ready to go. We've had our candidate do his physical test, his reading, writing, his psych evaluation, background. We've done all those things, and this would be the last hoop to get approval from council to go ahead and apply for that grant. I was surprised, to be honest, that Grand Valley had a spot open that late in the game, but they did. So I'm kind of well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be kind of a person. So do you have any questions for me? I know it's kind of a,
I do.
yes.
So this grant pays for the candidate to go to academy then?
Pays for the academy and will pay the wages while they're in the academy.
Okay.
So, I
Oh,
mean,
so he'll, okay.
So that's an important piece because when they added only $4,000, that's not a lot of money for 15 weeks, right? I mean, and he's got a family, he's engaged. So to go from making the money he's making his job now and tell him we would have figured something out. But the fact that it does cover that wage is important. We did look at some options on making it a salaried position too, but there's some wording in that grant that doesn't like that because of the Fair Labor Standards Act. They wanted them to be paid for all hours, even though I'm getting into the weeds. The wording was strange in the sense that it said they had to be paid at least a minimum wage. And my argument was, well, I mean, the salary that we would offer is well over minimum wage, but didn't matter. So, I think it's the right thing to do. The individual's local, they want to stay local, don't worry about having to train somebody. There's never an absolute, but I don't worry about training somebody and having them being taken by a bigger department that still has a pension, because that's what's happening right now. There's bigger agencies offering thousands of dollars on sign-on bonus and still have some of the other benefits. So does anybody have any other questions?
Do we have to pay back any of this
No.
or match anything or, okay.
I did the math on what I thought the total cost would be based on, I think they had said the academy's 670 hours. That put it at about 15-week academy. I think that put it at like 4.5 hours of overtime per week. So I factored in, your regular hours and your overtime hours. And I think that left us with $6,000 left. The academy's $7,000. Uniforms are $330, and a student fee of $1,700. So that's where I get my $3,000 that I think it'll cost us. But you also have to consider we're not paying the wage of the individual that we don't have right now either. So, yes.
Do we have an idea yet when this person would be on site in uniform training with your team?
Yes, so part of the job description, and we're still tinkering with that, but that would be middle of August, and that's when they would start in the union. That's when they would start to be able to accrue PTO. That's when they would start to pay union dues and those things. Those wouldn't start until then, until you actually make it through the academy and you're certifiable and we can hire you.
Do we currently have a recruit position defined in our organization, or is that?
It's what we were working on, made a cadet position is what I basically called it, stating this is what the cadet position is. This is unique to the situation of being put through an academy, because who knows, this may be needed again in the future. I just don't know that. With current levels and current application, could be. So it was something, to your point, we needed to make that so that it was, we're still tinkering with that. So I just sent that to Tracy and Joel last week, Friday.
So he'll do it, or they will do their own transportation to,
Yep, we've already worked on, so the sheriff's department's got 3 going. We've already talked to them about carpooling.
perfect,
So we're not having 4 different vehicles going, we carpool together. And
good. Anything else for Jay? Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the grant.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jay. Next on the agenda is the water utilities, 11D1. Request to approve a contract with Abonmarche for the professional engineering services for DWAM/DSMI in the amount of $326,635. Doug?
Yes, earlier this year, Eagle notified us that we received the DWAM DSMI grant in a total of $487,385. Of that, Abonmarche will do a lot of the work, paperwork, inventory work, research work, and that's what this is, this PO covers, this proposal is for them doing that work. It will update our drinking water asset management. Basically, this will look at the pipes in the field, update what our current asset management is. It will also update our GIS system, solidify where the assets are. Next item on the agenda is purchasing a couple of GIS units. This will be used in conjunction with our current staff for locating with this grant. And then the DSMI is drinking system. That's for the inventory of lead service pipes. Eagle requires us to have a complete inventory of our services into them by December 31, 2024. So this will pay for Abonmarche and city staff and/or a contractor to identify all of the services, not only that we will be replacing in the couple years, but what we have out for the 20 years that Eagle gave us, identify all of the services in the city, so that we know exactly what we have.
Great. Okay, thank you, Doug. Any questions for Doug? Okay, I'll entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11D2, request to authorize a purchase order for Silversmith Data for 2 Android tablets and GPS units in the amount of $7,260. Doug?
Yes, so Silversmith already provides GIS service for us. We have our water and sewer system on there, mapping. This is to purchase 2 Android tablets, cellular-based tablets, and then GPS units that will allow staff to go out and locate water services, water stop boxes, water mains, hydrants, and the GPS units puts it within, I'll say less than 3 feet of, so they can go back and find it. Stop boxes, they're great, they're, I'll say fairly easy to find 9 months out of the year, but when they're covered in a couple feet of snow, or sometimes we find people like to park vehicles over them if they know they're gonna get shut off. But it allows us to find them easier. So it's not only but the stop boxes, but it's also all the pipes in the ground. During the construction of downtown, we will be down there locating, as they're putting pipe in, so we know exactly where that pipe is on our GIS system. So this, in conjunction with the DWAM grant we received, the grant pays for 25% of the equipment. So that's being covered for this equipment, as well as then the city pays for the 75%.
I'm assuming this is a budget adjustment then
Yes, it
for
was
that?
identified in the current budget as GIS for the distribution system.
So yes, it is a budget?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So you said the city's only paying 75%. Is that 75% of the 72, or is the 7,200?
Let me see.
I don't see that.
It would be 75% of the 7,200,
Okay. So we're only paying 5,000.
5,400.
Okay.
I believe that's how that.
And the,
Good.
in the report preceding this one, it does say the last line.
Yes,
The
so,
grant will reimburse 1,850.
and our cost is 5,500.
All right,
Great.
any more questions?
There's that annual charge for the data plan.
Yes, so because the tablets are cellular, so that way we can, right in the field, it uploads it right to the Silversmith website. So yes, it will be a $600 annual fee for that. Our goal, our feeling is, once we are through these projects, if we don't need both of them, we can downsize from there.
Do we already pay some annual data plans?
Yes.
You've probably got other
Yep,
devices.
yep, we
Okay.
already have other devices.
Okay. Nope, that's it for me.
Okay, I would entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda is Public Works. 11E1 is a request to authorize a purchase order for Chloride Solutions LLC for beet juice for the 2023-2024 winter season in the amount of $8,250. Doug?
Thank you. Every year when we order our salt from MiDeal program, we order an early delivery and a backup seasonal. The early delivery is what we apply the beet juice to. That's an environmentally friendly material. It's applied to keep the salt in a place, and it does help save us a little bit of salt. So what we're asking for now is the approval of, when we get the salt, to order the beet juice to go with it. and there is a mistake, I apologize. We currently pay $2.71, not $2.65, so it's my bad, I apologize for that.
Okay, that's all right. So we pay for this like ahead of time, correct? So we're locked into this price?
No, we ordered our road salt and get it delivered, the early delivery in October. Once we know how much is coming, the 300 tons, what we're asking for, then we contact the solutions company. We let them know how much we have in stock right now, plus what the delivery is. So
Oh,
we'll
okay.
pay for it once we get it.
Okay. This is just to approve you to do that at that time. Okay.
I don't remember us doing beet juice before. Have we done this in the past? I don't,
The
this
3 years,
is how we've
yes.
been doing it? Okay.
Yeah, I think Aaron
Thank-
set it up a number of years ago.
So I don't remember approving beet juice last. My mind is going. Happens.
Any more comments? Okay, could we get a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11E2, request to authorize a purchase order for the State of Michigan, Michigan Deal, or MIDeal, program for road salt for the 2023-24 winter season in the amount of $40,500.
But MDOT wants all the municipalities that participate in the program to let them know by April 5 what early delivery and what regular season backup orders would be. So we're proposing increase it this year to 600 ton, 300 early, 300 seasonal. What we're seeing is we're applying more salt throughout the year and less plowing, actually. Just the weather system, the way it's been the last few years, so. And that currently, at the time, MDOT does not know the contractor. Once they bid it out and get bids back and let us know, then we'll fill out the POs for them.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I did see on here, in the winter season of 2022-23, it says 300 at 60.33 is $19,890,
Yeah.
which is more than the 2023-24. So I think it was either just a typo or a math. It should have been $18,099. It doesn't affect anything we're doing, it's just the difference of the
I
typo.
apologize,
So-
my mistake.
No, that's okay, you don't have to apologize, it's just, to point it out. Anything else on the salt?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is a request to adopt Resolution 2307 to authorize a change in the standard lighting contract between the City of Allegan and Consumers Energy Company.
For the downtown streetscape project, we are working with Consumers Energy to take out the existing poles and then work with them on a plan to replace some existing with new units and transformers. What they are asking in this changed amendment to the streetlight agreement is that we approve the resolution and give them a check to put the ball in motion, or the wheels in motion, if you will, to get the streetlights out. It's kind of a step-by-step process.
Oh,
With a streetlight amendment requires one to take them out, and another amendment at a later date to put them back in. And they won't do anything unless we get the resolution and a check to them.
oh, okay.
How many streetlights are we talking about?
I believe there's 36 poles, and if I recall correctly, there's 30 lights. Some poles are guy poles. That's why the number's different.
Okay.
Oh,
So $67,000 to take out 30 lights?
That's an estimate they gave us.
2,000 per light roughly.
Wow. Okay. Once again, I'm in the wrong business.
and,
And when it's monopoly, you really can't negotiate.
because we currently have a contract with them, correct?
Correct.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah,
streetlight
so-
agreement with them.
Yeah.
Is this already part of the regular streetscape project budget, or is this a separate?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
This is part of the streetscape budget. The contract with consumers, every time we amend it, it has to be accompanied by a resolution. That is the only reason this is coming to council this evening,
Okay.
is because consumers won't do anything unless a resolution is adopted by the local legislative body, which city council is.
Thank you, Joel.
You're welcome.
Any more comments? Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11E4, request to authorize a purchase order for Abonmarche for engineering services related to Rossman Park Improvement Project in the amount of $24,900, and to appoint the city manager or his designee as a signature.
I'll take this, Doug. Yeah, very quickly, council, you will recall that we were awarded a Michigan DNR Recreation Passport Grant earlier this year to make improvements to Rossman Park. Behind you is an example of the improvements, or a concept of the improvements we plan on making, including the resurfacing of the pickleball courts and adding some outdoor adult recreational areas. And I use the word adult because they are not going to play, they will not be playground areas. Kids can also play ping pong, just so we're clear. Part of this grant, and the grant budget submitted, was $24,900 for the professional engineering services. They will be doing the final site design, then they would be doing the bidding, and then the construction management portion of this project as well. So this is all inclusive in that grant. You've already accepted the grant at a previous meeting, so now we're just starting to put this into action. Once you approve this, they will get to work on the final design, and then putting the bid documents together, and then we'll go out for bid.
Any questions for Joel on that?
When's the hope that that's gonna get started? Let's see that that July?
Yeah, so I will give you the most generic answer. We hope to get started in the springtime.
In the spring? Okay. I'm sure that, I mean,
Yes,
that has to do with.
the way this grant works, I think we have to spend it by the end of their fiscal year, which is September 30th.
Okay.
Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is our amended item 11E5, request to adopt resolution 2309 to support the Second Street Bridge project funded by the MDOT Local Bridge Program. Doug, you gonna take this?
Yes, back in February, I received an email from MDOT saying they were accepting a call for projects from different cities throughout the state for bridge repairs. Knowing that the work done on the Second Street Bridge this past season was limited to the superstructure and substructure, and nothing was done with the sidewalk and the painting of the stuff above the substructure, we thought we'd approach Abonmarche, asking them to apply for the project in 2026. Part of the application packet is to have a resolution included in that packet. That was drafted over the weekend by Katie over at Abonmarche and forwarded to us. That's why it's a late addition to the agenda. So we're asking that council approve the resolution so we can submit it. The project estimate is, I think, is 1.22 million. It's 95% state, 5% city. The city also pays the engineering for it as well. And it's to be, it would be a 2026 project.
And the way I read this, it has to be used on a bridge that is on a state, like off a state road or
It
something?
has to be one that's open to vehicular traffic, because we approach them about the trestle bridge.
Okay,
They said,
All
no, you can't do that. It's a
Okay.
pedestrian bridge.
okay.
You can apply up to 4 different bridges in the city. So those were our top 2, and they shot back, said, no, you can't do the pedestrian one, unfortunately.
Okay. ORVs don't count.
We're keeping our eyes open.
Okay. Any other questions for Doug? Any comments?
When I first saw this, I thought, didn't we just do the bridge? And then I read through it, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's everything above.
Me too. And what was going through my mind is, yes, it's a nice chunk, but could we use their 61,000 we're gonna spend on this in another place in the city? I mean, you hate to give up that kind of money when, you know, for that size of a project, but that was what went through my mind,
Yeah.
so, but,
But spending 61 to get 1.2
Exactly.
or one,
right,
almost $1 million.
yep.
It's a good investment.
I guess my question is, if this is a 2026 project, is everything okay until 2026?
I believe it is. We have the bridges inspected every other year. They're gonna be inspected again this year, even Second Street. I don't recall any deficiencies up in the upper part, other than paint, a little corrosion here, a little corrosion there, but nothing really major to shut it down. Scott Engineering did do an inspection following last year's work on it. They did leave it at the 4-ton rating, so I did not notice anything. I think I shared it with the council, but I don't recall anything outstanding in that report.
The boardwalk was inspected too, the sidewalk part?
Pardon me?
The sidewalk part was inspected too?
This last fall?
Sure,
I'm gonna have to double check that. I don't know for sure.
okay.
But the work for the 2026 application will include sidewalk upgrades, new boards.
Yeah. If you could get back with the,
Sure, I'll let the city
Confirmation on
manager
that.
know and he can pass it on.
great, thank you.
Okay, could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You may be seated. Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda is 11F, City Manager and City Clerk. Request to adopt Resolution 2308 to establish a fee for the keeping of chickens permit.
I'll take this one.
Okay, thanks, Michaela.
No problem. So following council's last meeting, where there was discussion about whether to keep the permit requirement that was written in the ordinance, we consulted with our city attorney, and it was his recommendation at that time that we do keep the permit just for ease of enforcement. If we did not keep the permit process, we would be forced to go through the abatement process to remove chickens from a property that didn't have a permit, or I guess you wouldn't have a permit in that instance. So in doing that, I did create a application for the permit, which was included in your packet. $10 fee was listed on that application simply because that was what was discussed at council's last meeting. And then with the amendment to the ordinance, allowing up to 6 chickens, I'll now go back and change some of the wording at the bottom there. Other than that, does council have any questions?
So is our thinking, again, going back and rehashing this stupid chicken ordinance, that you've worked very hard on, and I appreciate that.
I know, right.
Is the $10 fee we're just thinking that's covering costs of what the staff is gonna have to do? That's just our, $10 is just gonna cover time? Okay.
Yes. And this would be a one-time application. You wouldn't have to fill it out annually. It would just be a one-time $10 fee as well.
The other thing, Michaela, is say I have 4 chickens and I decide I don't want chickens in another year. I think, oh, it was kind of fun to take care of my chickens and it gave me something to do. Do I have to apply for a permit then? And I already have that permit, so do you
I-
care if I get rid of my chickens and get them
I
again?
think we care at that time because essentially the permit, we're using that, we're requiring that the resident initials next to each point on that application, just so they're acknowledging exactly what's required. So as long as they've already acknowledge those points, I don't think it would be necessary for them to reapply.
Okay, so then you'll just keep them on file forever?
Yes.
Okay.
Does the permit apply to the location or the person?
The location, yes.
So should we add on the top section after the address someplace for staff to put the parcel number, or, oh, you do have it?
Yeah, we have
I didn't see
parcel
it.
number
There's
listed.
parcel number, so yeah, it's attached to the location.
Yep.
I was looking for that, and I was like,
Yes.
look right past.
So if somebody moves out of a house and somebody else moves in, they can have the chickens and the permit just carries through?
Technically, yes.
So
But then
that would void out the
Okay,
educational part of the permitting.
So the owner, that owner
Yeah,
didn't.
so right now, what you're being asked to do is to approve the application and adopt the resolution setting the fee at $10. Earlier this evening, you've already adopted your ordinance. So if we get into some weeds about enforcing that ordinance, we will address those issues at that time.
I make a motion to approve this, the $10 fee for permitting is 23.08, yeah, 8,
9. Oh, 8, I'm sorry, yep.
to establish a fee for the keeping of chickens permit.
Support. Point of discussion from my perspective, I think Joel's right. We passed the ordinance. People really want chickens. I don't think the permit or the fee is valuable. I'll reiterate that, but we've got to move this forward. And at this point in time, given what we've agreed to already, this is what we've got now, so.
Any more comments? It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Right. Okay. Next on the agenda is the board appointments. 12A, appointment of Jason Ramaker to the Planning Commission with a term set to expire on December 31st, 2026. I will say I have looked at his application, and I'm sure he's a good candidate. Did you want to add anything, Joel?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Could I get a motion?
So moved.
So,
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, communication from city manager, city council, and mayor. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say?
Yeah, just a real quick shout out. This past weekend, Cabaret wrapped up their 36th annual band show. Dean Michaels, like he does every year, shows up at my house Sunday morning, usually around 11 o'clock the day after, to just, let me know it all went well. They are going to have it again next year. And he personally wanted to let me know how well or how wonderful it was working with Ryan Berza on just, helping out there. They bring in their own sound and light person, but he goes, Ryan was just wonderful to work with. So just a shout out for Ryan and that work there. Also, I feel compelled to let council know that Joe Leverance has exited his due diligence period on the powerhouse. So that process isn't moving forward anymore. And let council know that we are finalizing the grant paperwork for the downtown rental rehab program that One Enterprises was doing at 109 and 114, 116. However, within the past week, we have shrunk that size of that project, and we will only be working on the apartments on the second floor of 109. We will not be doing the 4 apartments at 114, 116. The developer felt more comfortable and confident moving forward to 2 apartments instead of 6 apartments right now. So It's exciting. We're gonna get 2 more apartments downtown Allegan, which is a great win for us. However, I wish we had the ones above 114, 116.
Does that do anything? Do we have grant money for that? Does that do
Yeah,
anything?
so we secured, it's through the MEDC Community
Oh,
Development
right.
Block Grant Program. It's the same rental program, or same grant program we did with Katy Lake, or 155 Brady Management at 113. It's similar to the one we did with Michelle Mearsma back in 2018, 2019, when Lumberman Lofts was, completed. So,
Okay.
Did Joe Leverance fix the roof on the powerhouse?
no. Or, let me respond a different way, not to my knowledge. He had pitch construction out there a couple times, or he had pitch construction out there to look at demolition.
Please, yeah.
Go ahead. Doug, if you have information, that's great.
I still go in there once a week, just to check the roof. Joe did not do any work on it. It's basically the same. No major collapse. The walls are still there. Everything seems to be in place yet.
Good. It's good to hear.
It probably helps we didn't have a whole lot of heavy snow constantly all winter. We had a couple downpours, yeah. Yeah. Anything else from staff?
Just an update for you all. The Hoard of the Dragon, located in the rental space behind the Regent Theater, chose not to renew their annual lease. So they closed as of last Friday, and their last day in that space will be this coming Friday. I am, however, in early talks with an interested party for that space, so we'll see where that goes.
Okay. Michaela, do you have anything else?
Nothing for me.
Tracy?
Nothing for me.
Doug? Cosman? Yes. Good.
One update.
You had enough minutes.
I never met a microphone I liked. If you recall, the city council approved Abonmarche Engineering to do design on the riverfront boardwalk. They did submit a preliminary design and estimate a few weeks back. I met with the engineer on phone. There were some tweaks they had to make with it, revise the estimate to get the estimate quantities matching what's on the plan. So he indicated that, when I spoke to him last week, that we should have the design document to review again later this week, and hopefully get it out for bids here in the next week or so.
Good. Okay.
How much was the estimate?
Engineer's opinion of cost, as they call it now, is $62,000 range, if I recall correctly.
And that's to stabilize just the suspended boardwalk? As opposed to the whole riverfront boardwalk?
I'm gonna have to, I can get you a copy of the plans. I mean, I can email them to the
That'd be
city
great.
manager, you can send them out.
That would be perfect,
All right.
thank you.
We can wait until we get the thing back from Abonmarche. I mean, that's fine. We don't need to see it ahead of time until we get prices and stuff, right?
Just curious, just looking for information on it.
I'll get the bid packet later this week. The plans that I have, when I spoke to him last week, he did make some revisions to those plans. So I want to wait, if it's okay, and give you the ones that we're going to put out for bid.
Yeah, when the bid packet's put
Perfect.
together, it's loaded to our city website, and we can send a link to all of council when the bid packet is uploaded to our city website.
That would be great. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Dave, do you have anything else?
Not at this time, no. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Mike, do you have anything?
Yeah, the water department changed over my, line to my house. I got to spend the day with them, and, very professional team. They had to hand dig on the one side of the house because the machine couldn't get into the narrow spot. And they did it, and I was talking to the guy, and he said he loves working for the city. I mean, everybody was top-notch, professional. The only thing that I will say is the inspector, for when it was done inside, came and looked at it, and there's no sticker or anything on it. So I'm not sure why we needed them.
Well, I appreciate hearing the comments about our city crew that's replacing it. Part of, because we're doing it with the state money, state grants, the state's requiring us to get plumbing permits. Previously, PCI said as long as the city's doing it and the city hired plumber, they were not concerned about it. But now, using state money, we have to have PCI and the plumbing inspector do it. I'm sorry to hear that, he didn't meet up to your standards, but he is our plumbing inspector, so.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because if I change the water heater, they'll slap a sticker on it. Change the furnace, they'll slap a sticker on it. Yeah,
Want some evidence that he was there.
yeah, there's just nothing there. But the guys were top-notch.
Good, thank you. I will let them know.
Peter, do you have anything? Roger?
Just two quick things. Did we ever find the leak?
No, we have not. February, we got the numbers, they're the same as January, about 7.5 million gallons lost. Wednesday, we're meeting with a company out of near Lansing, Bath, Michigan. They specialize in leak detection. And they would be giving us, they'll actually set up their equipment and do an example for us, on a couple places of water main. And then they'll look at, what the city entails, the size, how many feet of pipe we have, and they'll give us a quote for going through the whole city on it. As staff, since I made it public a couple meetings ago, we have had many calls, inquiries, hey, there's water here, so we go and check it out. Nothing substantial, no large leaks. Doug Kay asked me, this morning at our meeting, and, at 7.5 million gallons a month, that's 165 to 170 gallons a minute. It's not a small leak. So
Exactly.
it should be servicing, but it's not. It's either, in a place that's all sand and is sinking into the ground, or it can be a place where it's actually diverted underground into a storm catch basin, storm drain. We've been looking at storm drains throughout the city, also trying to see if there's anything, going into those storm drains. But still have not been able to find anything.
Wow.
So
All right.
We're
I was just-
continuing to
I was
search.
just wondering. Thanks. And then last thing is, it's just exciting to see the big yellow tractors out there tearing up pavement and digging big holes, and it's exciting to see it working.
Thank you, Roger. I second that. It is real exciting. I have to drive downtown every night just to see before I go home, see what they did throughout the day, so it's kind of exciting. I know, it is exciting. I would just like to tell council, and I know that Joel has mentioned this millions of times, and Tracy has also said, if you have questions as you're reading your packet, it makes it a lot easier if they can dig it up and email it at that time, or at least have the answer for us at the meeting instead of bringing it up. And, you're always welcome to bring up questions, but it just makes it easier if you can think of your questions ahead of time and email them. I emailed Joel a couple times this week on questions, or this weekend, so they're really good at getting back at you too, so. That's all I have. If there is nothing else, we will adjourn at, no, hold on. We will not
Please do
adjourn.
not.
Excuse me,
Thank you.
sorry. We have to go into, next on the agenda is a closed session. Number 14A, request to enter into closed session per MCL 15.268H to consider material exemption from discussion or disclosure by state and federal statute. Are we going to go to the conference room, Joel, or?
We'll stay in here.
Okay.
Don't we need a motion and a vote to go close?
Yeah, motion and a
Yes.
vote, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to go into closed session, MCL 15.268H. Support.
We have a motion and support. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
We do roll call vote for going into closed session.
Oh, yep, okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zeter,
Aye.
Councilmember Hands,
Aye.
Councilmember Redding,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Byrd,
Yes.
Mayor Galloway.
Yes,
All right, 4-1.
motion carries.
Live.
Okay, we are back in our regular meeting. Is there any further discussion? Okay, if there is nothing from no one, we will adjourn the regular meeting at 8:30. Thank you, everyone.